Welcome, Marty.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our guests. Having your Monday on a Sunday night has a lot to do with how we experience our week. We often get off work on Friday, and we may push it a little bit late. We get out of work 5, 6 o'clock, trying to wrap up for the weekend, but we're kind of excited for the weekend. We go into Saturday knowing that Saturday is capped by Sunday, so we have plenty of buffer time to recover on Sunday. Right. Then we have Sunday, which, a lot like Saturday, is still a weekend, except for the fact that Monday's creeping, right? So about Sunday, 4 or 5 o'clock, you're starting to realize Sunday's kind of winding down, and the anxiety of Monday starts rolling in. You start thinking about things like your email, or what do I have to do this coming week? It's going to be this busy, crazy week. Or there's so much unknown that you just start freaking out. And I thought about this a lot. It's happening to me constantly. And one of my favorite authors, Eckhart Tolle, wrote The Power of Now, and in The Power of Now describes the difference between depression and anxiety. The depression, to get that out of the way quickly, is all about the past. It's regret, things we haven't completed, things that are still kind of looming there. Whereas anxiety is all about the future. What's coming up? What don't I know about? What am I fearing? And this is really having Monday on Sunday night is all about this anxiety that we have about this unknown coming week. So I've been looking deeper and deeper into this because in my business, I actually consult on efficiency in business operations. And because of that, I often get people struggling with things like calendars and their email, and they're hyperactive, and they have a lot of this anxiety. They don't even finish up on Friday. And so they're really just putting things off on Friday, going into Saturday, partying their faces off, doing whatever they do. They go into Sunday, they start gardening, right? They love their gardening, and then that 4 o'clock mark comes and they got to do something with it. So I've developed a way of handling this, a way that I can give you back your full Sunday. Because a 3-day weekend is awesome, and a 2-day weekend is normal, but a 1.5-day weekend just doesn't sound very good, right? So we want to get our Sunday back. And to do that, one of the main things we have to do is make Monday morning sacred. In order to make Monday morning sacred, I tell my clients, and I do this myself, not to book any other appointments with anybody else between 9 and noon on Monday mornings. The reason why is that's now a space that we know about. It's now no longer an unknown space. It's a place that we know what we're going to do in that time. We're going to wrap up and find all of those emails over the weekend, put them in the right place, and start answering those. We're going to schedule out the rest of our week before we answer any other scheduling requests. And then we're going to finally say yes to the few people that we need to meet with. And our week is set. And we can start with some peace of mind. And we actually started on Monday instead of starting our Monday on Sunday. So making Monday morning sacred is the mantra I want you to remember. This is the way that we move into our future in our presence instead of moving into our future already having experienced it twice. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this before, but for me, about 4 or 5 years ago, I had the economy collapse 3 businesses on me. When that happened, I had a massive amount of anxiety, depression, all of this stuff going on. But I used to start dreaming the next day, right? So I'd go to bed and I'd start dreaming about what I got to do the next day. So I basically had my day, and then I woke up and I had my day, right? This is very similar to Monday on Sunday, right? You're having your Monday too soon. So I don't know about you, but would anybody like to have their full Sunday? Okay. Pat would like a full Sunday. Do you like a full Sunday? I don't know about any of you, but are any of you experiencing Monday on Sunday right now? So making Monday morning sacred is the way to solve all of these problems. To give you a little bonus as well, Friday evening, one of the best things you can do is wrap up your Friday by looking at the next week's schedule, thinking about it briefly, making sure you're flagging all of your emails and everything else that needs to happen. And as those things roll in over the weekend, you flag them as they come in over the weekend, and you forget about them until you get to your Monday morning because you know you got 3 to 4 hours to get everything done. Make Monday morning sacred. Thank you.
tip to heart. Our next speaker is our very own Tim Wilson, with a speech, which I'm telling him, is called Speeching Made Simple. Speeching Made Simple by Tim Wilson.
If you've ever had to give a speech, maybe in gardening, maybe on efficiency, maybe on voice development techniques, whatever it is, you know the challenge is to figure out what is a speech. So you got to give a speech. You got to have an approach to it. You got to figure out how you're going to approach it. That's the efficient way, right? Marty? You figure out what the approach you're going to take is. All right. So I had that problem. I was going to give a speech, and so I started asking about a bunch of people I knew, some friends, just strangers. Just what do you think a speech is? And a bunch of them started saying a speech. Tim, a speech is a presentation. Speech is a presentation. You got to go out and you got to present. So I thought, great, no problem. So I created a 100-page PowerPoint slide deck. Got it all ready to go. I took my 100-page PowerPoint slide deck into a room and got the screen set up, got the projector going. And just to make sure everyone was paying attention, you could really see it clearly, I dimmed the lights, and then I started presenting. And about slide 25, I think it was, I noticed half the room was doing one of these numbers. And one guy didn't even bother making any, he didn't bother even pretending. He's So at the end of the presentation, I went over to one of the audience members and I said, did you learn anything in my presentation? He said, yes, Tim. I learned the meaning of death by PowerPoint. Not the effect I wanted. So I started asking some different people. I said, well, what do you think a speech really should be? And they said, Tim, that presentation is boring. I want to have a performance. Speech should be a performance out there. I thought, okay, like a circus. So I hired a couple clowns, a few dancing seals, and a juggler, just to make sure everything was going well. And so I was giving my speech. As the clowns were handing out candy to the kids, and the seals were dancing over in the corner, and the juggling was going on. I gave my speech all the way through. And afterwards, went up to another audience member and said, what do you think of the speech? They said, Tim, I love that speech. What was the point? He says, I have no clue. Not quite where I was going. So finally I went to people who I knew were just really serious people. I knew that they'd give me the straight dope on what a speech is. I said, well, what do you think of speeches? I talked to a bunch of really serious people and said, Tim, it's all about the point. You got to pound that point over again until your audience gets it. Okay. So I created a speech and I mentioned the point, I think it was 1,000 times. Just kept repeating that point over and over again. And finally, at the very end, I went up to another audience member and said, did you get that point? I said, yes, Tim, and I never, ever want to hear you speak again. But then I did something a little different and actually learned something about presentations, about speeches, about what really the nature of a speech is. And it helped me a lot. And once I started applying that idea, the next speech I gave went pretty well. People were engaged, interested, paying attention, having a good time, relaxed. I started relaxing a little bit. Didn't get one of those flop sweat situations. More comfortable up there. And just started kind of taking control and feeling good up there. Yeah, things were going well. And I started applying these ideas. It's a simple process, and it just made the speech a lot more fun. And it happened because this thought suddenly occurred to me that I've been going around to people kind of at random. Just saying, what do you think, what do you think, what do you think? Getting a lot of opinions, but I never really talked to somebody who knew what the heck they were talking about. So I thought, well, if I really want to become a better speaker, I had to talk to somebody who does speeches, who seriously does speeches. So I looked around the different clubs and I discovered this guy, Bob. Now Bob is a medium-height guy, blonde hair. He'd been in Toastmasters a long time, but what interests me is that he's a professional speaker. So I thought, this guy's got to know what the heck he's talking about. So I go over to Bob. I said, Bob, I'm trying to figure out what a speech is. Is it more of a presentation, or performance, or is it more about the point? Tim, speech is not about a presentation, performance, or even a point. Wait a minute, Bob. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of people, and they're all agreed it's got to be one of these three things: presentation, performance, or point. No, that's not what a speech is. Okay, Bob, you're so smart. You tell me, what the heck is a speech? And he told me. And that's when I started understanding what really a speech was all about. How simple it was, how easy it was to be able to do a speech. So Tim, a speech is simply a conversation with the audience. That's it. It's a conversation with the audience. So when you're giving a speech, create a conversation. So you talk, they think. You talk, they think. You got to get out of the way and let them think. So pause a little bit. Let that conversation occur. Let them think. So I thought about that. And that's what I started doing. And it had a great result. Now, right now, you might be thinking, Tim, you're crazy. That's not the way things work. Speech is not a conversation. It doesn't make any sense. That's silly. Or you might be thinking, Tim, makes sense. A speech is a conversation. I just get out of the way and let them think. It'd be a lot easier out there. So different ideas you might have. Whatever ideas you're having, you're thinking. You're thinking something. There is some thought process, something going on in your mind. As long as I get out of the way, I don't talk all the time, you can have those thoughts. You can have those ideas. Just let them think. Now, if you start doing this, if you start using this simple process before you're speaking, you too will discover that it's simple up there. You've had conversations before. Conversations are no big deal. You get your voice back, I'm sure they have many more conversations back. Conversations are simple. You talk, they talk, you talk, they talk. That's all speech is, and it's simple. There's no pressure. It's not this whole thing about some horrible experience you got to freak out about or be nervous about or any of those things. It's not a big deal at all. In fact, it's calming. When you're calm, your audience is calm. Everybody's calm, everybody's relaxed, everybody's focused. When that happens, you take charge of the stage. You look like you know what you're doing. And if you talk long enough, you'll probably convince everybody else you know what you're doing. And if you talk even longer, you'll convince yourself you know what the heck you're doing. When all of that happens, it's just a simple process. Create a conversation, let them talk. So when you go into a situation in front of an audience, and you start to feel a little bit nervous or that flop sweat coming on, and you're thinking, I don't really know. I don't know if this is the right situation I can be in. And you start thinking, I don't know if I can do this. I shouldn't have done this. And you just want to run. Calm down. Take a step back. Remember, create a conversation. Let them think.
Thank you very much, Tim. Our final speaker of the evening is Peggy Conrad. Her speech is titled A Long Road. A Long Road, Peggy Conrad.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and distinguished guests. Have you ever come up to a situation that you really weren't prepared, and it would take you maybe a couple minutes before you could figure out what was going on? Well, that happened to me about 7 years ago. I was coming home from work, a normal day at work, and I drive up in front of my house, and there I see this young man standing at the front of my door. With one hand, he is banging on my door, and the other, he has a knife in his hand. I then see a woman inside my house, with the door open, a young woman, long dark hair. I have never seen her before in my life. So as I walked up to the front door, the young man was my son. Oh, and let me tell you, Frankie, my oldest, such a good boy, such a nice kid. And the girl inside was a wannabe actress. Of course, they're filming. My house was a film set because this is their passion. This is my son's passion. And so, you may not know this, but I'm a forensic scientist. And so when I walk up to the door, not really knowing that they were filming that day, my first thought came as a forensic scientist. And I was thinking, a bread knife? Who in their right mind would use a bread knife to threaten somebody with? And so I just waited till the director said cut. And then it was my mom, the mom in me came out, you know, the one that wants to help her son, help guide him and everything. And I said, Frankie, really? A bread knife? Come on, honey, come into the kitchen. I'm going to show you what kind of knife you need. And a couple steps towards the kitchen, thankfully, that responsible adult came out in me. A knife with that girl? Are you kidding me? What happens if she got hurt? But Mom, we were being really careful. I'm like, have you ever heard of an accident? There is no way that you are going to be in a scene with that knife, with that girl. You better learn how to edit, splice, whatever you need to do. And so the rest of that film set, I sat on the set and I watched, and there was no way that that knife was going to be anywhere near that actress. And their next, let's say 5 years later, my middle son, Jack, he is tall and he has amazing blue eyes, and his passion is writing and directing. So at 17 years old, he wrote and he directed his first 35-minute film. And so we had gone up notches, you know, no longer was it a girl that wanted to be an actress. It was like they held auditions and they had actors auditioning for them. And so we have actors that need to be fed. They need to use my house because that's where makeup and wardrobe is. We have the neighbor's garage that they're using to film in. My son is the producer, Frank is the producer, Jack is the director. Now Jack is only 17 years old and he has students from Columbia College working on his set. He has students from DePaul University and Northeastern University as well. And he's really getting a hard time because they're thinking that he is not qualified because he was only 17. And so my husband and I talked to Jack and we said, okay Jack, tell me then, how old is it to be a proper director? I mean, how old do you have to be? Is there a certain age? Because you're not at a certain age. And so that film was A Fearful Endeavors. And the reason that I'm standing in front of you today is that it has been a long road coming. That was their first student film, and they have done subsequent student films from this point on. And we are holding our first premiere, which is going to be held at Northeastern University. There's going to be 4 short films. My son Frank, he produced all 4. My son Jack wrote 2. And so I would like to invite you, not only because you are my friends, but because you're my Toastmasters, and I would love to have you experience this with me. So it's Northeastern. It's June 27th from 7 to 10, and I would love for you to come. Thank you.
That is completely awesome. Yeah. Yes. So now Hi. Did we help you?